Hello everyone, and welcome to this forecast for the full moon on November 8th. This is a total lunar eclipse in sidereal Aries, tropical Taurus. It's in the lunar mansion Bharani, meaning she who bears. So it's all about bearing something, to bear down on something, to give birth to something. And it's quite a formidable lunar mansion. It's one of the more fierce, as it's called, lunar mansions and divisions of the zodiac. So it's certainly quite a fierce time. There's an intensity about this full moon and total lunar eclipse for sure. I mean, even just looking at the fact that it's in Aries, which is itself quite an intense sign, and the fact that it's almost exactly conjunct and will be exactly conjunct during the whole eclipse period, the planet Uranus in Aries. So let me remind you that Uranus has been in Aries for quite a few years now, since 2016, and we've seen this sort of rise of quite a lot of volatility in the world in recent years. It's partly due to Uranus in Aries. Obviously it's to do with a lot of other things. But more recent years, in the last couple of years especially, as soon as Saturn moved into Capricorn in a square to Uranus and Aries, we have had a very conflicted situation going on. And in a way, this full moon is a sort of culmination point of all of that in the last 2 years. Because Saturn in Capricorn is all about keeping some sort of structure, or attempting to keep some sort of structure going. But we cannot, because it's with Pluto. So if it were just Saturn in Capricorn for the last couple of years, we would not have seen the kind of things we've seen. It's because it's conjunction with Pluto, the Lord of Death, grinding things to a halt in many ways and destroying things and ending things and changing things forevermore, that we're seeing this kind of conflicted situation. Because what do we see in this full moon in Bharani, which is in the Indian system, the Vedic pantheon of gods? It's ruled by Yama, the god of death. So Yama, the god of death in the Vedic, Pluto is the god of death. They're basically facing off in a way at this time, with Saturn more exactly in this square. And so what we've got really is a breaking down of old systems that no longer work, while this new way of doing things, this revolutionary stance, has been taken now. And this Aries, Uranus, and now also Rahu, the north node of the moon, eclipsing the moon, creates this highly volatile and charged, transformative time, really. I mean, I don't like to get on the sort of, bandwagon of, of eclipses many times when they are happening, every 6 months. Let's face it, there are eclipses happening every 6 months, at least 2, sometimes even 3, and it's not that unusual. And, this one is going to pass like every other eclipse that we've had in our life. And things, yes, are changing, but it passes and then life goes on. So don't get too, I would say, bogged down in it or too concerned about it in that way. However, I do think that this particular eclipse and full moon phase is important, and it's a pivoting point. My sense more than anything is that this is like a culmination point, like I said, around those issues, around those conflicts, those revolutionary sort of impulses that are quite evident throughout the world. We could, depending on where you look at, in the world, look at it from either perspective. We could look at it from more the Aries, Uranus, Rahu perspective and the revolutionary stance that are, that's obvious in many countries, including, for example, Iran. Or we could look at it in the Saturn way and the Saturn strength, which is also very strong. The thing is, Saturn is particularly strong in Capricorn. And we could look at a country like China, which has Capricorn rising, and Saturn in Capricorn right now is showing, again, lockdowns for millions of people. And we could see that side. That's quite obvious. And the conflict between both of those is, well, when you see scenes like that in China of people being locked in their apartments again and, them all shouting out their window, it's like, are we still there? China is still there. The world of media has moved on from that, but it's actually happening. It just as it was in 2020. So for the last few years, this has built to this kind of crescendo in a way. And I just feel like this eclipse, although a lunar eclipse, not a solar eclipse, and so not as impactful in terms of the long term, at the same time, I do feel like this lunar eclipse is this, like I said, culmination point and pivot into, I think, what is going to be like massive changes on this planet in many, many ways. In so many ways, wherever you want to look. I mean, there's so many things we could point out, but the important thing here is, of course, for you individually, because that's all you have in any way control over, if you have any control over, is to look at your own individual response to this. And even if you don't have a control over how you respond to it in the very kind of impulsive sign Aries, with Mars itself retrograde right now, if you don't have control over how you react to what's going on right now, you might be able to respond to how you've responded in a different way, put it that way. It is what it is. Now, how you experience it is going to be a certain way based on your own chart and your own circumstances, i.e. where you're living, and also what planetary cycles and sign-based cycles have been triggered in your own unique chart. So you have your own unique blueprint. So this is a transformative time because of, like I said, Bharani, the lunar mansion, and Yama, the god of death, or you could say it, the god of transformation also. You could think of Yama as well as the god of Dharma. And, when something isn't right and we know it's not right, we will rally everything that we have against it because it's not right, or we don't believe it's right. And when we don't know what's right from wrong, there's another, way we can look at that. Then those who seem to know better can really take advantage of this time. This is certainly a time for being open to other possibilities, kind of almost like a rebirth, I would say. And I know that sounds really dramatic. I don't like to be too dramatic about these things, but I do think that there's this sense of this full moon phase culminating in this kind of realization, revelation maybe even, about something that we have going on in our lives, whatever it might be, and a way we maybe could change that and have this, like I said, this rebirth experience. And every moment is dying to create the next. So it's like we're constantly recreating ourselves, over and over and over, every single moment of every day. But sometimes in these kind of cycles, and especially around eclipses, it seems to be more urgent on the one hand, and even if we don't do anything and we just sit back and just watch it happen, there still is something happening. There's change happening that we don't even have to do anything with. This is why generally it's actually recommended not to do anything around these solar or lunar eclipses, because the energy already is in flux and things are changing, and it seems to be, there are things changing that seem more at least outside of our control. Because they are the nodes, the shadow planets as they're called. And so, it's on some level within our control, but we're not conscious of doing it. So the advice there, therefore, is not to do anything or make any major changes, because you're just piling on more change upon change. So it's probably best to just observe the change first. Now, if there's something that you have to do, because in fact, this is all about change, this particular lunar eclipse, then that's absolutely okay. If you really feel called to, or there is no other choice left but to make a certain change in your life, that's exactly what is meant to happen. That's reflective of this eclipse. But if you then start to feel this urgency build and start to feel like you need to make more changes that aren't necessary at this time, that's probably not advisable, because again, you want to just see how all of this pans out first. Then you can make the changes. Then you have had the revelation. And once you've had the revelation, then you know what to do next. So during this eclipse, and there's quite a lot going on apart from itself being a total lunar eclipse in Aries, in Bharani, with Venus opposite in combustion in Libra. And it was exactly conjoined the sun during the solar eclipse nearly 2 weeks ago now. And so that's where we've started from. We've started from this kind of really shaky new start during that new moon and solar eclipse in Libra. And this time we're going to have Mercury joined the sun exactly by exact degree for this particular lunar eclipse. And so there's definitely a lot hidden here as well. I want to say that basically eclipses always do that anyway, where you have something revealed, yes, but then also something obscured. At the end of the day, the nodes of the moon are eclipsing the sun and the moon. The south node Ketu has already eclipsed the sun, and the sun is said to be afraid of Ketu, the south node. It's afraid of loss in any way. The sun is about having a sense of confidence and assurance and resource and having access to resource. And Ketu removes things, so it makes us feel uncertain about things. And then 2 weeks later, on the 8th of November, we have this total lunar eclipse conjoined Rahu. And the moon is afraid of Rahu because Rahu is irrational, impulsive, and exaggerated and distorted and can really cast a shadow over the mind and how we feel. And when you have an eclipse with Rahu always, whether it's the sun or moon, in fact, it always feels a bit shaky. It always feels a bit unnerving, especially in Aries. I would say, but it always feels a bit sort of like even shocking. You know, when we have Rahu kind of eclipses, it's very shocking usually. Now we have not only Rahu conjunct the moon, but Uranus, which is likened to Rahu. Uranus is the modern day ruler of Aquarius in astrology. Rahu is the traditional Vedic ruler of Aquarius. So you can see why there are so many parallels between Rahu and Uranus. And they both have a lot in common. They both shake things up. They both create shocks and surprises, twists and turns that we are just not expecting, that no matter how much we might be prepared for it, we just didn't see it coming, basically. So if you just cast that out into world affairs right now, I mean, there's so many ways we could see this play out. But again, draw it back into your own self and your own inner awareness. And that's the more important work to do here if there's anything to be done. Because these are, remember, eclipses. They are shadows. So they are your shadow and your shadow projections onto other people, including people who are more obviously playing these out on the world stage. So if you look to people in the news and you only focus on that, then you're actually missing an opportunity here during the eclipse. And that is to call back your shadow, to call back your projection, to become more whole. To acknowledge that that person that's playing that out whatever way that you feel is inappropriate or is triggering you in any way is actually you. And that might sound a bit bizarre until you actually question that and look at it and sit with it and realize actually that everything is me. Everything that's happening out there is me, because everything that's happening out there is framed around how you observe it. And so there are no two people on the planet that view things in the world the same. As Osho said, there are as many worlds as there are minds. And so every mind is looking at the world in its own way, from its own perspective. And so the world that you see out there is you. The world I see out there is me. So it's important during an eclipse, obviously, to be mindful of our shadow aspect, the parts of us that we've neglected or even rejected, that we've been told or taught, or we think ourselves that are inappropriate, we've shunned, we've put aside, we've hidden. This eclipse is bringing it up. Pluto is bringing it up. Yama is bringing it up. Bharani is giving birth to something else. But to be, giving birth to something else is these kind of like birthing pains, right? One of the things that I was speaking with earlier with a patron, in fact, about was this Rahu-Mars Dasha, which I'm currently in. I'm in this end cycle of Rahu, in this Rahu-Mars period, which is the last cycle of Rahu. And this is very much like that, because this is an eclipse with Rahu eclipsing the moon in Aries, Mars' sign. So it's a very Mars-Rahu kind of experience. Anyway, and what is Mars Rahu? Kishori explains it as, it's like squeezing the last bit out of the tube. It's this last bit, this last push. And what this patron said to me, and it really struck, was that actually that's what like birth is like. It's that last push. And there you can see, just obviously, I don't know that personal experience giving birth to a child, but giving birth to anything, it's like, for example, if I use my book, for example, because Bharani is all about creating something. And I'm at that stage now with the book. It's like, oh, I'm just so tired. I mean, I don't know if I can do this, and it's like, but yes, I can. I just need to give it one last push and then it's out. One last push and it's done. And that's another theme of this particular eclipse. There's maybe one thing in your life. There's something in your life. Maybe there are many things in your life. And it just needs one last push. And then you can give birth to it. And it's not easy. Absolutely not, but it's necessary, and it's going to happen. It is going to happen. So let it happen in one way. I'm not saying that you should push through this and force things prematurely. Absolutely not. You don't want to give birth prematurely, but let it happen because it is happening anyway. So it's a complex time and we need to be mindful of that. There are many other issues going on in the zodiac. Least of all, Mars is retrograde when we add that in because it rules this total lunar eclipse. And so there's a lot of anger, a lot of angst, a lot of frustration, a lot of setbacks, a lot of uncertainty around the changes that are happening in the world out there and in the world in here. And so added to that and all of the Saturn square to the planets and the nodes and all of that just creates this really tense pivot, really, I would say. And so take it easy, I would say. Step back a bit, slow down a bit, pay attention, especially on the eclipse itself. It's very early on Tuesday or later on Tuesday, depending where you are. In the US, it's early, and then in the UK and in Europe, it's later on in the day. So take your time with this during the whole day of Tuesday and leading up to Tuesday as well, because we have the Moon's Day, of course, Monday, the day before. And then we have Tuesday, Mars's Day, where the Moon is placed in Mars's sign on the eclipse day. So really, I would say on really all the way up to the eclipse and beyond, to then let it settle down Wednesday and Thursday and beyond, and to really kind of just allow things to be as they are right now. The one thing I want to leave you with, which is always the case for every single eclipse, and this is something that my teacher Pearl Finn always used to talk about for eclipses, and the importance of looking at Jupiter and what Jupiter is doing and the insight and clarity that Jupiter can give us during what is a very uncertain time of change and distortion and great many insights, and all of that's great. You get a different perspective during an eclipse and all that's wonderful. But unless you have that clarity of Jupiter, and Jupiter more especially, is a counteractive influence to Rahu. It's like its antidote. If Rahu is a poison, and like a minute dose of a poison can be very healing, at the same time, there's too much Rahu, it just feels like that. It just feels poisonous. And the antidote is Jupiter. Now, Jupiter itself is not having any great influence on this particular eclipse. It's in Pisces itself. It's retrograde until the end of the month on November 23rd. It stations direct. So it's not looking at the moon. The signs are adjacent, Pisces and Aries. So they don't really see each other so much, and maybe they're not on the same page. Now, when you don't have Jupiter influencing an eclipse, and we can't see that, or we can't sense that, or we might say that there's this thing going on that's quite erratic and shocking and strange and new, and there's this other part of us, though, deeply felt and intuitive, deep understanding of something else, but it's separate to that other thing that's kind of maybe shocking or unusual or whatever, new. Because they're adjacent signs, they aren't looking at each other, and Jupiter in that case isn't helping out in a way directly regarding this situation. But that doesn't mean that you can't actually sit and be still and hear that still voice within yourself and know. Just be still and know. Because that knowing, that stillness that Jupiter can afford us, is helpful in everything, in every decision we make, in anything we do, any actions that we take. And although, like I say, I'm advising perhaps not to take too many actions around this time, even though it might feel like you need, the urgency is there to do something, sit back on it a bit and do what's necessary, of course, and respond appropriately to what you have to do and make the changes you need to make, but don't necessarily do anything above that. I'm getting quite a lot of messages, emails from people who are feeling this kind of urgency. I always get it anyway around the eclipse time. I get a lot more emails and requests for readings and all of that. And I just always kind of advise people to slow down. There's no rush here. I know you feel the urgency. I myself feel the urgency, but there's no need to actually do anything right now. It's best to kind of just let it settle and let the dust settle after this lunar eclipse, and then see how it's all panning out. And then you can move. Then you can make a decision. So, there's a lot going on during this total lunar eclipse in Aries, in Bharani. I wish you, as always, the very best for this full moon and eclipse. I hope the changes that it brings about are, embraced fully by yourself. I hope it works out for yourself. It's all going to work out in the end anyway. Of course, eclipses always show what has to change anyway. And it might not always feel comfortable. It might pull us, yank us out of our comfort zone, but it has to happen. And if we just remember that, then we might be more willing, at least a bit more willing to go along with it. Okay, so I hope that's been of help. As always, I wish you the best, and until next time.